Alright. I can't really tell whether that looks about straight, yeah. Alright. Alright, people, alright. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا bienvenidos a todos mi gente Juan Ying Layth and Swagatam people, Swagatam. Alright, so what is going on? Muhammad Ali, Billy's in the house. Alright, people, this looks a bit, I think that should be about right now. Alright, so Billy's in the house. Sarah, Ahmadi, Elizabeth, Zubi, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Inna. Those of you tuning in, people, you know the drill. Click like, click share, share that. Let the fitan and fasad begin. Alright, where's my tea? Alright, so, and my drink, of course. People, my drink. It's got to be done, people. It's got to be done. So, what is going on? Marco Saeed from Australia. Wasim is asking whether I've started the new series of Vikings. I have not yet, I'm afraid. Right, so let me just share this. Un momento, por favor. Right. Share this to my... There it is, right there. Click share. Alright. People. So today there was a topic a few people had asked me about, and that was to do with marriage and the Guardian, not the Guardian newspaper, as in having a guardian present. So I thought, well, okay, damn, where did I... Oh, here it is. Alright, so I thought, well, I'll go through some details on that in a moment. Yep, I'll do that in a moment. Let's see what else is going on first, people. What else is going on? Well, what's been going on, people? Somebody said Arsenal won. They may have, I don't know, I don't really watch any sports. That's interesting. I mean, for some reason, I just can't see the the fascination with it. I mean, I can understand the sense of, but I just can't relate to it. It must make me totally weird. But chalo, weird is a category I'm well used to by now. Alright, so take up basketball. Oh no, I don't find any of these sports, seriously, not cricket, not football, not anything, and I can't even fathom the fascination that people have with them. So, North London Derby, Mufti Ibrahim in the house. Mufti Ibrahim, oh, Ibrahim, a Maliki from Coventry, people. Wasik Sheikh. Right, so what's going on, people? What thoughts have been plaguing your mind this past week? Right, can you speak Pashto? How kana? Alright, Pakhto bhai. That's what we're talking about. I'll tell you something on a side note. This week I was looking into... It's a bit, I don't know whether it's interesting or boring for some of you, but I was looking into prehistoric cave paintings. People are thinking, oh no, Mufti needs some serious psychiatric help. Oh, I need it. I'm well beyond that stage of needing psychiatric help. I'm like way gone. That was like in childhood. So, but it really is fascinating, I'm telling you. It's so basically, since prehistoric times, so we're looking anything from 10,000 to 40,000 years ago, there are cave paintings, okay? So art that was done in caves by Homo sapiens, who were from the Stone Age to pre-Ice Age, or during the Ice Age and things like that. Or maybe some of it was done by Neanderthals. We're not so sure, but generally most of it was pretty much by Homo sapiens. And it's really interesting, it's fascinating, the kind of symbols. So altogether, some researchers have kind of gone out there and exhausted all the symbols that they have, and they have about 32 approximately symbols, which is still a bit very primitive for a language, as in a written language. But they were drawing certain things that they were seeing, and it's mainly animals. So they're drawing things like mammoths or horses, but they're horses. This is because horses being tamed by human beings is only so many thousands, it's only a few thousand years old. But prior, this is back then. So horses were still the ancestors of the modern day horse, but they were probably slightly different. And things like that. So animals that may have been, that are today extinct, but we can get an insight into them by looking at these cave paintings. And some of them are, they depict humans in a very, they don't usually focus on humans at all, but sometimes they might have some kind of like stick drawing, so it's not so developed, the art. Whereas the animals are very well developed, some of them. You'll be shocked if you saw them. You'd think, wow, like they definitely, I mean, I couldn't do something like that. I mean, they drew them really well, some of them. Very artistic. So the shocking thing is, there was a human being who we, let's say 30, 20,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, who we will never know. Yet, we will have some communication with him till today, or her, through what they wanted us to see. It was obviously a world that they were seeing. So these things, they put them down, and we now can see them as well, and it's amazing. So I think I find it really fascinating, that kind of stuff. The human story, how humans kind of developed and stuff like this, and also how they so there's certain prehistoric stuff about but anyway, this is for, I would encourage people to really look into stuff like this. I find it incredibly fascinating. What's this? Please give your insights on the North Sentinel tribe living in prehistoric era from Islamic perspective. Right, this is an interesting question now. So these people that lived back then, and we've got, by the way, figurines. So they drew, so one of the earliest kind of statues, it's not a statue but like a figurine that we have, is of the Lion Man. So it's a human but with the head of a lion. But not the lions as we know them today with the mane, but just kind of without the mane, or either a very small one. Now, that's probably dated almost 40,000 years old. I mean, that is, whoa, back then. And there's a lot of figurines of women as well, by the way, especially not so much their, and even some of the drawings, not so much their head, just chop their head off. They just said, well, that's useless. But more so their bodies, right? So especially the lower bodies, and I suppose up to the bosoms as well, but they and well accentuated. So people are not quite sure what was this. Were they simply just saying, look, here's a woman, we're going to sculpt a little figurine out of her? Or was this a goddess of fertility? Or was this just, some people just what was it? We will never truly know. Was it some people having a bit of a bit of nutty fun, as in saying, oh, they were saying, well, little do you know, son, but a time will come when when they'll have movies for this kind of stuff. But for now, we'll have to just do with these cave art drawings. Was that prehistoric porn? Could have been. We will never know, truly. But I don't think it was. I think it was more abstract and meaningful than that. So the question is, what was going on? What message were they trying to give? Were these people, what was their relationship with God? So that's an interesting one. That were prophets sent to these people? One would think, well, why not? As in some message, some understanding. You see, like I'll tell you what's interesting. So these prehistoric people, or these prehistoric paintings, cave art that is found throughout the world, on different continents altogether, by the way. The symbols very clearly, or these kind of pictographs that they have, overlap. So, for example, the way they use, some things might be common, like, okay, they're going to draw a hand. So they have like a hand that is painted white, as in and they have just the outline of a hand, so they call it like a positive hand or a negative hand. But so one might say, well, that's just duh. Even kids do things like that. You know, they just put their hand on a wall and draw over it. All right, fine. But the other kind of like the lines that they drew, like the zigzags in a certain way, and these were actually very overlapping, like on different continents. So whether you're looking at in Asia, whether you're looking in Europe. Now, the similarities are that strong that it's quite difficult to say that this is just simply a coincidence. That they all seem to be doing very similar shapes. So one theory, and I'm inclined to this theory, is that this is because, in essence, it traces it back to one origin. That the people that were the proto, what they call the, for example, in this case, the Indo-European prototype people, the earlier people that split off into all these people, that they were one, obviously, in essence, just one people that kind of broke off. Now, this teaching, or whatever it was that they were passing on, must have been something coming down for millennia, that they must have passed down through teachings and stuff. So the fact that, and language is another really interesting, although we don't know what language they spoke exactly, except it must have been that proto, Indo-European or whatever it was, these kind of, but today the overlaps in language are several words. When you trace them down, they're too much for coincidence. We know that these languages were ultimately connected. Like the other day I was just saying, here's a word, daughter. Now it's interesting how obviously in English that we write the GH, obviously don't pronounce it unless you're doctor, unless you want to. But the interesting thing is that you see, like this, and it's kind of Middle Eastern, especially the Farsi dukhtar, which is where this would have originated from. So dukhtar in Farsi, it's used sometimes in Urdu as a very eloquent word as well, but dukhtar means daughter. Like this, you will get so many words that trace their roots back, and that's language. But the people, so if they had a message to do with God and things like this, it would have passed down over the kind of eons that passed, and obviously it would have changed as well. But in my understanding, they would have had some message, some connection, but not like a kind of sharia the way we have a sharia or other civilizations had a sharia. because these people were prehistoric, they were pre-civilization. Remember, these were cavemen people. They did not live in societies the way we live in societies. Agriculture is only about 9,000 years old. Can you believe that, people? 9,000 years, that's it. Prior to that, there was no farming. Okay, so... right. Was Sheikh... The theory is that the rock is from outer space. Perhaps. Rubbama. This word, rubbama. Perhaps. Perhaps. Talvez. Was Sheikh Ibn Abdul Wahhab's Indian teacher Hayat Ibn Sindhi a Sufi? Right. The Indo-Pak Ahlul Hadith people, so those like, Maulana Nazir Hussain, and prior to that, a lot of them were very different to the kind of Wahhabi, Saudi, I say Saudi, but it's pre-Saudi, the Najdi kind of Wahhabis. The Ahlul Hadith from India were very, they were strange. So on one hand, they were very Sufic. On the other hand, they were very anti-bid'ah as well. So it's quite strange, but they were different. Like if you read them, they don't, you'd be a bit confused. So they don't think of, they definitely seem very supportive of tasawwuf and things like that. Not necessarily. Somebody had asked me before, by the way, I've used the term Wahhabi, and somebody had asked me that, alright, there's a question here by Marco Saeed, survivors of Noah's flood equals Proto-Indo-Europeans. Marco Polo. Where are you taking Nuh alayhi salam to? You're taking him to the caveman era. Nuh alayhi salam wasn't from the caveman era. Nuh alayhi salam lived in civilization. So, right, no, definitely not. Nuh alayhi salam wouldn't have been like from the cavemen, and as in, like, he wasn't from prehistoric man like that. So this Nuh alayhi salam would have been, the Prophet Noah would have been from as in history, at least. I don't know exactly, but he wouldn't have been like from the Ice Age and before then. He would have been definitely post-agriculture. And Nuh alayhi salam's flood was not a global flood. Okay, it was just a regional flood. That's all it was. Right, what was I saying prior to that? Right, so I got Mudawwana endorse apostasy. Yes or no? Yes or no? This one? Yes or no? This one or this one? Yes or no? Which one? There's this meme of this guy, and he's kind of, his eyes are like, but they're like that. He's kind of like cross-eyed, but not cross-eyed as in this way, but like they're out there like that, the pupils, and he's holding a gun. And the meme says, which beep 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 gave this beep 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 a gun? Because his one eye's looking there, one eye's looking there. It's like some people are gonna get right. So what's going on? Joanna Sahiba, ahlan wa sahlan, Joanna G. Right, so as I was saying, yes, some people had objected to, I've used the term sometimes, Wahhabi, when I've been answering some questions. So just to respond to that, this term, if you check the fatwa of Bin Baz, Sheikh Bin Baz, and Uthaymin, Sheikh Uthaymin, right? So if you check their fatwa, so in the Majmu' al-Rasail of Uthaymin, he answers this question on the term Wahhabiyya. And Bin Baz in his fatwa, which you can find online, he's asked this question that there are some people, they call the followers, they call us, or they call us, as in them, Wahhabis. How do we respond to this? So in both of them, they respond. Sheikh Uthaymeen says that this is, he actually himself uses the term Wahhabi to refer to, he says Wahhabis are sorry, his question was more about do they praise the Prophet and stuff, and he says of course Wahhabis love the Prophet and so on. So he himself uses this term, but more clearly Bin Baz states that the people Wahhabis are the people of Tawheed, and he says that this title Wahhabi is a sense of pride which we should wear with pride. So this, they actually own this title, so there's no harm in me using it when they themselves use it. You know, this one not nice, you know. if people are gonna tell me off for using it, but then they're gonna use it themselves, this one confusing, you know, confusing. So right, are the Wahhabis from Banu Tamim? To be honest, I'm not so sure. I can check it up. Why Gangu Teli don't use it? Where are our friends? Today I'll be covering some hadith points in a moment when we go over the hadith that can marriage happen without a wali, without a guardian. So what else is going on, people? What else? What are some questions? What else? Let me see. Anything interesting? Let me take a look at some questions submitted online. Password? Password? Double password? Which reminds me of a poem. It says, the poem says, Zinda the जीना छूट गया, प्यासे थे पीना छूट गया. Wow, 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 wow. That we were alive and that we lost the ability to live. That we were thirsty but we could not drink. Zinda the to जीना छूट गया, प्यासे थे तो पीना छूट गया. बीवी को फोन का पासवर्ड क्या मिला, विंटर में पसीना छूट गया. He says that was because of the that because my wife found out the password to my phone, in winter we started sweating. Wow. That's why you don't need one, you should have, you see, them finding out the password isn't a problem if you've got two passwords. Right, so let's take a look, people. Cha, wah, huh? Zinda the jeena chhoot gaya, pyase the peena chhoot gaya. Let me see some questions that people have submitted. How should Imran Ali asks the question? I'm sure Zara has both your passwords. Oh, thank God she doesn't. She's still way too small yet. But how should children respond to abusive parents? The general consensus seems that abuse should be tolerated. And we should treat parents with great kindness, not even saying oof. He wrote oof as double O-F. Oof. That just sounds so much more like oof. It's the style. No matter what they put us through. Oof. Imran Ali seems to be a tormented soul. We need to offer some assistance to our fellow Facebook friend. So, what is the... That is not true. You do not need to put up with abuse. You don't need to say, oof. You know, when you're getting beats and you go, oof, oof. No, I'm sure I'm sure those days are pretty much over now. Those good old days when your parents would give you military grade training for free. So, I mean, but the answer is no, of course not. This is talking about people being rude to their parents. It's not talking about people putting up with abuse. That would just be silly. That would be wrong. They do need to seek the correct avenues in escaping abuse. Wherever abuse should be condemned and not tolerated. Obviously, I mean, there's a certain amount that parents would and ought to reprimand their children. They ought to tell them off on certain things, that's for sure. That is obviously if they're messing about, if they're doing certain things. If the parents don't tell them off, then who will? Right? But that said, that doesn't mean they start abusing them. It doesn't mean they say, what? You've done... Wait, let me put on the knuckle duster. Huh? You've made a mess here. Wait there. Whoa! It doesn't mean like obviously parents ought to reprimand but not abuse. So there's a distinction. And in the UK, I'm sure different places have different urf and different practices and what they allow. In the UK, I believe it's what is it? Is it like I forgot the loose terminology that they apply to it. I think it falls within that they can use kind of reasonable force to reprimand a child. But what does that mean? They don't define it on purpose. Whereas if it's not their child, they can't use any force. There is no force. It would be illegal. And if it was their own child, I think my understanding is they term it as like reasonable. But then what would be unreasonable is left to people's discretion, I think. Or now they're going to be like, Acha, so Mufti Abu Layth thinks he can use reasonable for... You're like, well, officer, I thought this stick was pretty reasonable. Not. It's a joke. It's joking, okay? Right, so, alright, Amani, Ola. So, I hope that answers that. Let's say I sin. Ibrahim is asking, let's say I sin. Okay, let's say, is everything predetermined by God? Acha. So you want to blame your sins on God? Let's say I sin. But isn't this God who's really God? Why am I gambling again? God, why are you making me gamble? Why does God play these games? No, it's not God, my friend. It's you. Okay. It's like that, you know, that line that it's not you, it's me. This is that line here. It's not God, it's you, my friend. It's you. So, the verse that Allah says fire. Oh, I've answered this before. Imam Sadiq says that free will isn't 100%. Also, it isn't 100% predestined. Okay, how should the child respond to verbal abuse, intimidating talk by the parent, to oof or not to oof? I think I think these kind of things people may need to seek professional advice and guidance. Also, it's tricky on what, you see, children, because it's a tricky situation, because on one hand, children can exaggerate a hell of a lot. Children can be very dramatic. But on the other hand, if abuse is actually taking place, then, you know, that shouldn't be. But here the person is asking about verbal abuse. I mean, it's a tricky kind of question, really. I think I'm not quite sure what that entails in terms of saying verbal abuse. Does it mean like the odd swear? Does it mean like turning their life into a hell? I mean, it's sad really to see how some people will treat I think people don't realize to what extent they shatter lives by traumatizing children. So, and one thing in fact, I say this is not restricted to children, for adults as well. I always encourage people that never, and be wary that never break people's confidence. That if somebody, for example, somebody's trying to learn something, I mean, it's different. Sometimes people might have a joke and a laugh amongst peers, but when somebody who is inferior in that skill to you is learning something, don't break their confidence if they ever ask you or if they do things like that. Always kind of assist them, because that is what kills talent. It kind of stops it dead in the tracks, because by doing things like by kind of mocking them, ridiculing them at that stage, that will prevent growth. And people don't realize with children how damaging this can be. You know, may Allah make things easy for such people wherever they are, because there's so many people, so many children with incredible talent, but I think it kind of dies away, withers away, because the parents might cuss them or mock them or ridicule them. And people shouldn't do that, especially, and it's shocking that they, of all people, they do it with their own children. It's amazing that, you know, I mean, I say amazing in a shocking, sarcastic way, that you'd never think that they would do it to their own children, but they do. And in fact, that's the people that they do it to, crippling them in terms of talent for the future. So I just think it's you know, may Allah assist these people wherever they are. I think, and one thing people should never do as well, in terms of, I think to boost confidence, they should never mock or ridicule or belittle the appearance of children. Okay, in fact, they should tell children that, you know, that's beautiful, if they've, you know, you look beautiful, or you look like this. They shouldn't kind of ever put them down, because a lot of people grow up with things like major insecurity, inferiority complexes, and most of these people, I say most of these people are absolutely fine. There's nothing, you know, they're not like, to be kind of just blunt, they're not like ugly people, or they're not like people with kind of deformities or things like this, but they perceive themselves as though they are. They feel that they're kind of like too ugly, or they feel that they're too, you know, that they're too incompetent, or they're just not. And this is something that they carry throughout life. So I would say it probably begins with childhood. So I know somebody said it's shocking that this isn't common sense. In a way, it is common sense, but people just take it too easily. They just kind of, I think Pakistani parents are probably the worst at this. They're just probably, honestly, I don't think there's, I think they sit on the throne of of like how to destroy, how to completely pulverize, decimate the confidence of children. But yeah, so they definitely do. And in fact, in Urdu, it's interesting that, you know, like we have sarcasm in English. So Urdu has a kind of sarcasm, but it's very different, because the sarcasm in Urdu, like which they call either tans or like tana dena, like these kind of things, are not, you see, sarcasm in English is kind of funny. So it's meant to be funny. But the one in Urdu is meant to be malicious. Having any hint of humor is just a byproduct. In fact, it's a far off effect. It's not even trying. You know, so people are really, really sarcastic. I think I narrated once before that there used to be this guy who studied with us in Pakistan, and he was in Pakistan, people are just ruthless about stuff like this. And this was when I was doing hifd in Pir Karam Shah's Sab's Madrasa in Islamabad. And there was this guy that, the young lad who was doing hifd, and he was very dark skinned. So, so they used to call him, tube light. They say tube light. They used to call, so this is the kind of sarcasm that they have. It's a very malicious, malignant kind of sarcasm, right? So it's funny sometimes, these things, but they're not trying to be. They are being funny, but they're not. They're being very maliciously funny. It's not like sarcasm in English, which may have some subtle, but it's more humorous. Right, so somebody's asking the question. Let's move on, folks. Averroes is the closest to Aristotle ever. Averroes is Ibn Rushd, the Maliki legend and don. Ibn Rushd, there were two Ibn Rushds. How credible is the Quilliam report on Pakistani sex groomers? How credible? I haven't read the Quilliam report, but I've said before on Pakistani sex groomers that this... See, the problem with this is by trying to... I feel that the grooming gangs are a problem. That I think everybody would pretty much agree on. But I feel the problem with identifying a race with this is, I just think that's unfair, because you see, it's okay in that nature, like saying that there's gangs of like people who are between their 20s to 30s, or 20s to even 40s, or even to their 50s, but generally, let's say younger people who are kind of like riff-raff, if I can use that term. They're kind of like in just roadmen, that kind of crew of people who happen to be sexually exploiting girls, teenage girls. This is found, it is found amongst Pakistani kind of, some of these people, they do happen to be Pakistani, those, the culprits. But then sexual offences as a whole, and much, you know, with children much younger than that even, are found predominantly with, let's say, white people. Now, that doesn't mean we would start saying that paedophilia is a white problem. Although, if you're going to, you know, if one was to look statistically at the whole world, infants, finding sexual kind of gratification from infants, disturbingly, I'm sure it is found in many parts of the world, unfortunately, but the way it's found in Europe and America is disturbing, the level to which it's found. And you don't generally, I'm just saying generally, you wouldn't find that amongst other societies that are very underdeveloped in the world. In that level, like, you wouldn't get people seeking sexual gratification from a toddler. Like, I mean, they wouldn't see that, generally speaking, but yet it's found in these societies. So one could, if they were trying to put forward some academic argument, say, oh, this is, you know, it's a very Eurocentric kind of problem. And obviously the Americans coming from Europe, in essence, the Anglo or the white, it's a white problem. But that would still be wrong. Why? Because we are then just stereotyping, and we're kind of hooking a whole race, or not even a race, a mega, like just so many races really, because white isn't one race. But I'm just saying, in a similar way to attach the entire Pakistani people to what some people have perpetrated is wrong. So I strongly condemn anything that leads to that, although I do recognize that there is a problem, that some people feel that, oh, it's okay to exploit, or they may have, especially in the past, felt that it was okay to exploit certain girls, and especially because of the drug thing and stuff like this, and help must be provided to these young girls. and these people must be cracked down on. I mean, they must catch these people and punish them. That kind of stuff I do strongly support, but I'm against attaching any racial card to these crimes. It's just like saying, well, you know, you could go through London and say, well, I don't know, if you're going to look at all the criminals, and let's just say, I mean, I haven't done this research, but let's just say, if we were going to say, well, oh, a lot of the street crime, the gang crime happens, a lot of the people arrested were black, let's just say. So now this is a black problem. That's not right, saying stuff like that. So this just supports racism. And it supports the kind of right-wing argument. So I haven't read the Quilliam report, but if that's what it's doing, then I strongly condemn that. Okay. So, right, what is going on, people? What is going on? Can you explain the hadith of the bi'r of Buda'a? How can it... Right, so... what's your thoughts on the quote? If you don't have a sheikh, then shaitan is your sheikh. Alright. So, surprisingly, Afghanistan only had 160 cases of rape. Get real, man. No, but look, you know, in some part, like countries like Afghanistan, and this isn't to kind of, but just being real, that's because the people they're raping are boys, okay? And you see, this is the irony that they, yes, on one hand, it's so, to violate the honor of a woman is seen as so, oh my God, like, you know, like people would go mad, like, so villages, it would create war. So people are not going to, and then women are not around so much, so they're all in their houses. So you're not going to find women just wandering on their own. So the opportunity for them to commit these crimes are less as it is. And then the consequences are so huge that they're thinking, well, this could lead to war and so on. And so then they just rape boys instead, because the boys won't say anything. And everybody's just like, oh, well, don't worry about it. Astaghfirullah. I mean, it's not a laughing matter, but I mean the irony is so bloody, oh my God. That is, so you have such a, see the contrast, you have Afghanistan and then India where it's just a green light for everything. And I don't know. Is it okay to aspire to have fame, such as being a pro footballer? Of course it is. Having, you see, wanting to be praised is such a base human desire. It's shocking, actually, how much of a strong desire human beings have in wanting to be praised. In fact, I was listening to there was a whole, and it was a particular study on, and it was a discussion on religions and things like, and they were trying to say, well, how religion has tapped into this base instinct that humans have, this kind of base desire to wanting to be praised. In fact, it was part of the discussion on it's a book I'm going through right now called The Bonobo and the Atheist. So the bonobo kind of monkeys that exist, and there's similarity to humans, but the whole discussion is on morality. It's a fascinating book by Dr. Franz de Waal. I know last time I was saying, and people were thinking, I don't know, he must be Asian or something. He's not. I think he's definitely European. So DE and then a separate Waal, right? W-A-A-L, France, Dr. Franz de Waal. So he has a few books, but in his book, The Bonobo and the Atheist, so he's discussing morality, but there's a point where he discusses Nietzsche and the whole, is man a blunder of God, or is God a blunder of man? And that was a quote by Nietzsche. And this whole discussion ensues about morality and stuff like this. But there they speak of this as well, that this base instinct of wanting to be praised. And they say, well, how religion exploited that. But put that aside. In the Quran as well, you find that even the prophets had said that وَجَعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. And here Imam Qurtubi on this verse of the Quran in his commentary highlights that in his tafsir, that you see the Prophet saying, and make those who come after me have a kind of a praising kind of tongue, or it says وَجَعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ, that they say that, oh, I was an honest person. You understand? That them commending my truthfulness or me being honest, those who come after me. And this is an interesting dalil that many fuqaha use from the Quran to say, well, there's no harm in wanting to be praised. And it's in fact a human instinct. It's like a base desire. So I think there's nothing wrong in that. Obviously, there's arrogance which is condemned. So if a person was to... क्या हुआ है? क्या हुआ? आंख में कुछ चला गया. Right, people. Layla's here. You're awake as well. चलो यहाँ जाओ. चलो ऐसे किया कुछ ऊपर. चलो यहाँ. Okay, चलो वो लगा लो उसके ऊपर. She doesn't want to. Right, so meow. Okay, people, just 2 seconds. I'm coming right back. Right, sorry about that, folks. Well, where were we? Sorry, just, I don't know. First of all, Layla shouldn't be awake. But secondly, I don't know what she's done. Probably just her hair gone into her eye or something. Right, so, folks, what is going on? Let's take some of these. What do you say about Adnan Rashid's statement that Shabir Ally is no authority when it comes to matters of Islam? Is it necessary to be schooled at some traditional religious madrasa? What if a man is defending Islam for decades but is schooled at some secular institute with good qualifications, PhD? And how do you compare religious education taught at some good traditional madrasa and at some good university? Omar Ali is asking this question. Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not so sure what Dr. Shabir Ally has studied at an Islamic institute. I'm not so sure about that. But that said, Dr. Shabir Ally is definitely more qualified than Adnan Rashid. Because Adnan Rashid is by no... he's most certainly not by any measure a scholar in Islam. He's somebody who preaches and does da'wah, and he goes to Hyde Park and does debates and things like that with Christians. I mean, as far as I'm aware, and this is Adnan Rashid himself stating, he doesn't understand Arabic. I don't even think he can read Arabic, as in read it without the vowels, as in actual Arabic. So let alone things like be trained in fiqh, usulul fiqh, be trained in the sharia, have studied the different madhabs, having studied, for example, the usul of hadith, having studied the actual books of hadith. I'm not actually aware, as opposed to maybe he's done independent reading or listened to lessons, but by no means is he a scholar. Maybe, I'm not sure what Dr. Shabir Ally has done. I have listened to some of Dr. Shabir Ali's kind of things on the Quran. I definitely feel that he is most certainly qualified to speak on Islam. I feel from what I've heard, his knowledge on... I've heard him speak from the Quranic perspective, and it's on point. And from what I've heard, he has a show called Let the Quran Speak. And it's a very good show where he answers questions on YouTube. So definitely he would have my backing, the Mufti endorsement. Chalta hai yaar, chalta hai. But I mean, but these other people who just go to like Hyde Park and do their da'wah, these people, you see the problem, I think a lot of them are sincere, or at least they began sincerely. I mean, I don't know how sincere they are now. But the problem with them is that they, you see, they begin doing something good. So you get people like, let's say you had Dawah Man. This is all one kind of crew, by the way. So you have like, let's say now Adnan Rashid, whose names come up, or you had Dawah Man. I think that's one of his, used to be his student, then he obviously refuted him. But you got people like Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab, and I don't really, I think there's 1-2 others. I've seen them on YouTube. I don't know their names. But you see, the thing with this is I think they are really good for the fact that, or the way they began, in the sense, I think that they began in the sense that there was a vacuum. Somebody's asking questions, as in they began sincerely. I think this is how the beginning, the kind of the etiology right, of how this virus began. So the thing is that it began with a good intention and a good practice of, well, there's a vacuum. People are asking questions about Islam. How do we answer them? So, nobody is there to say anything. So these people stood there. They voluntarily give their time for Islam, which is very noble, and I commend that. So what happened is they started to get a following. Alhamdulillah, I mean, they got huge following. Surprisingly, they have a massive following, some of them. So they started to get a following. And then, so what happens, naturally, you see, Muslims start to follow them. So first, when they're speaking about Christians are wrong on this, or like, let's say people like Zakir Naik, for example, he'd studied deeply comparative religion. So he did all these shows and debates on Christianity, and it's along that tradition, isn't it, Adnan Rashid, that on comparative religion, Christianity is wrong here, Christianity. And then what happens is Muslims then start asking you questions about Islam. Because Muslims, okay, they were impressed that you know so much about the Gospels, but that doesn't affect them. So then they start saying, well, in Islam, what is this? Now, these people feel that they ought to have an opinion on Islam. But the truth is, none of these people have ever traditionally studied Islam. So then they just seem to, and most of these people are pretty much, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, pretty much they're all Wahhabi. So the problem is that they are pretty much all just influenced by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, for God's sake, with its Bedouinized Islam. I tell you, if it was just to the Bedouins of Arabia today, we would, you might as well throw that Islam out the window. So the thing is that, so the Saudi kind of Bedouinized Islam that they carry in these Western countries then and start preaching it is massively problematic, because it then forces many Muslims to, I mean, some Muslims, fine, blindly follow, but other Muslims will then abandon Islam. And they'll be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so they'll just say, well, this religion doesn't make any sense to me. So this is why Islam came for the whole world. It came for Bedouins, I accept that. But we are not Bedouins, my friend. Let the Bedouins deal with their own kind of version, the Bedouin version of Islam. For us, city folks, born and raised in the West, for us, Islam, it came for us as well. So we have, and it came to take on and to be a kind of paragon of mercy and compassion for everybody, wherever they are. So yes, so that's why we need more homegrown kind of scholars. Okay. You can clearly see that it's haram for them to use. Can everyone hear him? Staying from answering. Sheikh Ahmed Deedat, I have to say, I've had a great respect for, and I still do. May Allah have mercy on him. He was a legend in his own right. But he came in a day and age when people were doing that. It was a kind of brutal, cutthroat debating scene, and he was a part of that. And to be fair, he never used to delve into Islamic issues. So I have huge respect for, Ustad Ahmed Deedat. I do, may Allah have mercy on him. I don't critique him, by the way, when I'm saying Zakir Naik, I think kind of got a little confused along the way. He started to think he's also a sheikh in Islam as well. I'm a medical doctor. The brother has a beautiful question. So what's going on? Mufti, should we support iERA? I don't really know too much about iERA. I know it's got Abdurrahim Green, Abdurrahim Green, and it's got Hamza Totsis. I think unless they're not part of it anymore. So I don't know. I know they were involved in Da'wah, trying to fight atheism with their debates, but in all honesty, it failed. And you see things like and I think now Hamza Totsis has kind of changed his direction, or is looking to change his direction. I'm pretty sure he has changed his direction, because that direction has failed. You see, you realize that Salafis, if you come from, I don't know how, my understanding is iERA was from that Salafi kind of, but it wasn't so hardcore. I don't know. I think it was, my understanding, it was definitely from that background of a kind of Wahhabi influence. See, the problem with that is they realize that they can't. See, these people are not utterly pro-reason, but they're using reason against atheists who are pure pro-reason. So it just takes them a little catching up once they know enough about religion to flip it on you. And then you're stuck. So because you don't know how to outwit that, because you see, you're trying to say, well, the Quran has all these scientific miracles and it has this and it has that, but then on the other hand, you yourself are not prepared to accept science. So, or not wholeheartedly accept science or the scientific findings, or you struggle. And this argument of the Quran, because the Arabic is so amazing, I mean, but yet none of these people understand that Arabic themselves. So these arguments have long been flawed. So I think we need to move away from this kind of an approach to just reconnecting with God. That's it for people. That religion, it provides that channel. That's all it does. And we ought to just try to be better human beings. That's all. I don't think this other thing is really, I think it backfires so badly. Mufti Saab, come to Toronto. Inshallah. Why not? Right, so what is going on? What are the regular voluntary prayers in the Maliki Madhab? Look, voluntary prayers are whatever you want to pray. Just pray them. Don't worry about it. You don't need to keep count. Ye kya gin ke. You're giving on to God by such acha, so I can do 2 here, I can do 4 here. Acha. But when you ask for it unlimited. Look, I'm not saying you have to pray voluntary prayers, okay? Many people don't. I definitely would slack in do the obligatory, right? So I'm not going to make a claim on praying all these voluntary prayers and things like this, but if you, even legends in the past like Imam Malik, you know, when somebody wrote to Imam Malik to criticize him, they said that, oh, we've never seen you really ever, you know, you don't engage in enough, you don't pray voluntary prayers, you never do voluntary fasts. You know, like, what kind of an Imam are you? They said to Imam Malik, you eat meat every day, like you indulge. And back then, this was like seen as a luxury. So Imam Malik said, he said, "Apun ka style hai boss." Not, but in his own way, he said that I eat meat because it gives me a good posture. You know, like he said, it builds the muscle. That's what he actually said. He said that I eat meat because it gives me an upright and strong body. And he said that, and people of knowledge ought to take care of their physique, because if they have a strong presence, then they are respected, and through them knowledge is respected. What a don. What a don. And that was Imam Malik. But my point coming back to this nafal is, look, if you're going to do nafal, relax. You can do whatever you want. Okay. You don't need to be so uptight about, oh, I can only give 6 here, or I can only do this, or I can only do this. And all this that people have said, you know, like in the Hanafi Madhab, they'll say there's 2 nafal after Dhuhr, or there's 2 nafal after Maghrib, or some people will say there's 2 nafal after this. Nafal that they say is not sunnah, right? Because if it was done by the Prophet, it would be called sunnah. So they say there's 2 sunnah, then there's 2 nafal. So the question is, where the hell did the nafal come from if the Prophet never taught? So let me get this right. The fard came from Allah. The sunnah came from the Prophet's teaching. So who did the nafal come from? So they say, yeah, the nafal, yeah, our ulama said they just put them there. So that's true. Ask them, where did the nafal come from? It cannot be in a hadith. By definition, it cannot come from the Prophet, because if it came from the Prophet, then it wouldn't be called nafal. It ought to be called sunnah. Even if it's sunnah ghair mu'akkada, non-emphasized. But it ought to be called sunnah if it's from the Prophet. The fact that it's called nafal means it's not from the Prophet. This is a voluntary thing that's been put there. I understand that the Prophet said you can pray nafal whenever pray nafal, like as in it's unrestricted. So I could just get up now and pray whatever nafal I wanted. And the Prophet taught us we can pray nafal as a genre. But to say Dhuhr has 2 nafal at the end of it, or Maghrib has 2 nafal at the end of it, where did that nafal come from? As an attachment to that prayer. Because it never came from the Prophet, because then it would be called sunnah. See? This one. It just takes a little thinking, and then it all adds up. And you're like, So it's not true. So I would say, look, if you're going to pray nafal, fine, go for it. You know, you're a better person than I am, but you don't need to count it. As in, you don't need to be worried that I can only do 6 or only do this. Just do whatever you can do. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, people. Right, this thing about marrying without a wali. Okay, Wali. Where's Wali? Where's Wali, people? Where's Wali? We got to play that game. So a wali is a guardian, especially when it's to do with the girl. Okay, so a father or somebody, it could be an uncle or it could be the grandfather, but it's a male guardian. Now, the question is, so first of all, let me tell you the rulings that the madhabs have, the scholars, how they've interpreted this, and then what does this whole discourse base itself on? And then let's take a look at some of those hadith. On a separate note, actually, before we begin that, I'll just highlight, this is actually a very fascinating book. It's an extraction of all the generally the problematic narrations of Imam Zuhri. Somebody had asked me about Imam Zuhri as a narrator of hadith that Darqutni has kind of extracted. Imam Darqutni. Why Darqutni? Because he has a major book called his Ilal, which is in about 10 volumes. I do have it right over there, people. Right over there. Let me over there. Right over there, people. So, and it's a major work. He's also the same scholar that critiqued Sahih al-Bukhari. He was a legend in his time for hadith criticism and hadith sciences, really. So now this particular work has just focused on Imam Zuhri's narrations. Why? Because so much come to us from him. All right, now, so as an example, I mean, this is not what I'm going to be looking at, but as an example, you will find, let's say there's a section in here. I mean, there's several sections, but one, let's say this, those ahadith which الأحاديث المعلّى بالاختلاف في إبدال الإسناد كاملا فوق الزهري. So those which the chain is completely changed when it comes to after Zuhri, after Imam Zuhri. So, for example, there's a famous hadith: إذا سمع أحدكم المؤذن يتشهد فليقل مثل قولي. This is from Abu Huraira, that if any of you hears the mu'adhin, the person saying the adhan, then let him saying Ashhadu an la ilaha, then let him repeat like what he's hearing. Now, Zuhri transmits this for Rawahu. This is transmitted by Abdul Rahman ibn Ishaq from Zuhri, who transmits it from Sa'id ibn Musayyib from Abu Huraira. But yet in another narration, it's transmitted from Zuhri, from Ata ibn Yazid, from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. And Darqutni mentions that is the correct one. وَهُوَ الصَّحِيح. Okay. Now, right, and that is, I believe, transmitted by Imam Malik, if I'm correct as well. The correct one. So, but the point being, nevertheless, is that there was a full chain which was transmitted incorrectly. So after Imam Zuhri, the chain which is a Sahih chain from Sa'id ibn Musayyib, who is a Don, from Abu Huraira, but this people, somebody has got it wrong. It wasn't even from these people. It was from Zuhri, from, you had in this chain, from Ata ibn Yazid, from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Okay, so that's, and it's got several examples. I just quoted that as an example. What was this one I've got here? This is just to show why, because this is interesting, that look, there's another hadith, and this is a popular one. You guys might have heard of this. لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. That رجل آتاه الله مالا. That there is no jealousy except in two things. You guys have probably heard of this hadith. It's very popular. That jealousy is only permitted in two things. One is in wealth that a person spends in the name of God, and one, it mentions about knowledge, or in some versions about somebody who recites the Quran. Now this is transmitted generally from, once again with the famous chain, from Zuhri, from Sa'id ibn Musayyib, from Abu Huraira. But the correct version is that's actually a wrong chain. Yet that's how it's transmitted. The correct chain, as Darqutni mentions, is from Zuhri, from Salim, from his father Ibn Umar. Okay, and then he goes through the whole discussion here to kind of show where this hadith, in all these different books, where it appears, and why. But nevertheless, I just thought I'll mention that this is a fascinating book. It comes in 4 volumes. I did buy it earlier on this year, but I am finding it quite fascinating, I must say. So it's called Marwiyatul Imam Zuhri al-Mu'alla. So the narrations of Imam Zuhri that are problematized, and illa, I have translated, people. I have. Banda na cheese. You know, in the like subcontinent culture, when they start kind of saying, when they want to kind of be humble, they start overdoing it. And they start like saying, you know, like, al-Haqir, al-Abdul Haqir, the despised one. Ahqar, the most despised, has done. You know, like when they're trying to say, I've done it, they will say, oh, this, instead of saying this humble servant or this humble, they'll say the most despised, the most wretched, the most crippled. Right, so anyway, so I've translated the term, this thing of Ilalul Hadith, which is a science, as hadith or textual pathology, people. So because an illah is a kind of like a disease or a kind of, that's what it is, like an illness. Okay, so Ilalul Hadith is like hadith or textual pathology, or narratorial pathology, people. And these ilal are pathogens, okay? Narratorial pathogens. Wow, sounds so narratorial. Right, so let me put that there. So what I'm going to do is I'll explain what this whole discussion is on a woman that is looking to get married. Does she need her guardians present or her guardian, Wali? And then we'll look at what this is based on and the problems there. So the madhabs, the schools within Sunni Islam, this is how they view this issue. So the Hanafi madhab is very clear that a woman does not need, and this is Imam Abu Hanifa, by the way. Imam Abu Hanifa, I should be more precise because his two fellow companions kind of betrayed him on this one. Right, if I can use the term betrayal. But Imam Abu Hanifa, who was the true don and legend, unlike, his two companions, but Imam Abu Hanifa says that a woman does not need a wali. Okay, he's very clear on this point. This is Imam Abu Hanifa, and other subsequent scholars like Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi support his view and argue in defense of it. Okay, in his book Sharh Ma'ani al-Athar, amongst other works as well. Then you have the madhabs like the Shafi'i madhab and the Hanbali madhab. They are very clear, and like the Salafis today, the Wahhabis, and they are very clear that a woman's nikah without a wali, without a guardian present, is batil. Batil, people, batil. It's invalid. Not even da'if. Batil! Batil, people, it's batil. So you've got on one side, you've got Imam Abu Hanifa. The other side, you've got people like Imam Shafi'i. You've got the Hanbali madhab. Right, now the Maliki madhab is a bit, I feel, unclear on this. In its apparent reading, it reads that it appears, or it's presented, let me put it like this. This is a better way of putting it. It's presented with this camp in saying that, oh, Imam Malik also said that a woman cannot marry without her wali. Yet, you see, right, so yet in the Mudawwana, and this is quoting from the Mudawwana as well, this is Al-Dhaban Madhabi Malik. This was written by Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, the legend, also called Young Malik. In defense, it's called in defense of the Maliki Madhab, or the Madhab of Malik. Now, you see, you will find a quote from Imam Malik where he's asked, so he's asked that, what do you say about the opinion of Malik fil mar'a tuwakkilu rajulan ghayra waliyiha ala aqdi nikahiha? Anyway, speaking about what do you say about this, a woman who doesn't get a wali, she gets another man to say, can you just read my nikah? Or about the slave woman who does this, or so on. Now, and this is the quote, you see, and this is in the Mudawwana as well. that وَأَنَّ الْمَرْأَةَ الدَّنِيئَةَ أو الْفَقِيرَةَ, that a poor woman or a woman that is of low status. Now, this is interesting. I'll come back to this point. الدَّنِيئَةَ, the one who is of low status. إِذَا تَزَوَّجَتْ بِغَيْرِ وَلِيٍّ فَنِكَاحُهُمَا جَمِيعًا جَائِزٌ. What do you have to say about that? Okay, so he then goes on to say that, look, Ibn Abi Zayd doesn't support that, by the way, but that's in the Mudawwana of Imam Malik by Ibn Qasim, hence he's addressing it here. And he goes on to say that, فَفَرَّقَ بَيْنَ الْغَنِيَّةِ وَالْفَقِيرَ فِي الْحُكْمِ بِلَا دَلِيلٍ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا سُنَّةٍ وَلَا إِجْمَاعٍ. He says that, this distinction was made between the rich woman and the poor woman without any evidence from the Quran or Sunnah and so on. And then he kind of goes on to say, look, that it's sometimes confusing. It appears to be that Imam Malik sometimes seems to be saying this, sometimes seems to be saying that, and so on. Nevertheless, let's get back to the point. You see, Imam Malik seems to make a distinction. Now, this distinction is important because on one hand, he seems to be in line with these, like the Shafi'is and these people saying that no, a woman cannot get married without a wali. But then he says, when he's asked about a woman who, let's say, is of lowly status. Now, by the way, some people have interpreted, as on a tangent, I want to mention this here. Some people have wrongly interpreted that, and I will highlight that they've said things like in the Sharh al-Kabir, and you'll find a few books that they wrongly, even Sidi Ahmed Zarruq and other people, Dasuqi and all these people, some of them have said, who can a woman of low status be who? And some of them have said things like, converts, or al-Musalmaniya, or they've said who doesn't have a lineage or wealth, or who isn't beautiful, or they've said a black woman. Now, I just want to clarify and condemn that statement is wrong, right? That was never said ever. That was not a statement of Imam Malik. This was hundreds of years after Imam Malik. Right, Imam Malik in his Mudawwana just says the word Dani'a, which is somebody of lowly status. He says that she doesn't need a wali. Now, people like Sidi Ahmed Zarruq or these other people, they come like you're talking, and some of them between 600 years after Imam Malik to whether it's going to be 800 to 1,000 years after Imam Malik. Some of these people commenting on this, writing these things, that is racist. It is wrong. Okay, so whatever is wrong, we condemn it. And that was not said by Imam Malik. Just to be very clear, he did say ad-dani'a. He uses the word dani'a, which means lowly status. Now, these people later on in their times are saying who has lowly status. Oh, a Musalmaniya, a convert has lowly status, or this has lowly status. That's their interpretation being superimposed. But now let's come back to, because the reason I'm saying that is it's important. You see, this just shows that somebody, like people said to me, why do you condemn this hadith as problematic, the one of the age of Aisha being 6, when the scholars in the past didn't have a problem with it? But we have to understand that a lot of these scholars in the past that they're looking at from the medieval age, they had many outlooks on life which we would condemn. And many of them did have racist outlooks on life as well. So we would condemn that as well. So, so just to be clear that even these people who criticize me for saying that, look, you are being critical of this hadith, but Ibn Hajar and all these people who came afterwards accept this hadith of the age of Aisha being 6, and you're saying it's not acceptable. But most of those scholars, if you look in their works, they will also have racist tendencies, and they will see it as absolutely normal. Like, they won't see that as they're even discriminating. They will just take it as a given. Like, yeah, of course black people are down there. Now, they'll see that as just, like, I'm not being racist, that's just a fact. They will think of it as a fact. So, just because scholars have said it doesn't make it correct. Okay. So it's not from Allah, it's not from His Messenger, it's not from the Quran or Sunnah, and it's not even in that case from the Salaf. This is from scholars of the medieval age. Right, so just putting that aside, coming back to this point, the reason Imam Malik distinguishes this, it's important. Why? Because it shows us why the wali was important in their eyes. The guardian was important because it was all to do with status in society. It wasn't actually something to do with a divine commandment from God. It was more about not breaching the peace, not having kind of social discord or disunity, or to kind of maintain a social cohesion. So in their society, they felt if a woman was to get married like this, it's going to cause problems. So they said it was necessary. Now that's not so clear in like the other people's views, but in Imam Malik's view, when he made this distinction in saying, well, if a woman didn't really have that kind of a status, it's no big deal. It showed so it's not actually from Allah or His Messenger. Because if it was, then it would apply to everybody regardless. That's an important point, people. And by the way, this is what you find... I can't actually see any comments, by the way. Let me just see. Oh, right. So that might be because... Right, I don't know what no, but I didn't actually do anything, so I don't know how that happened. So, nevertheless, coming back to this point, right, so I can't see, for some reason I can just see who's watching, but I can't see the comments, and it's confusing. Let me just press this, see what does that do. No. Anyway, right, let's get back to this point. Now, I want to take a look at a hadith. Now, most people will tell you that there are several ahadith to say that a woman cannot marry without her guardian. La nikaha illa bi wali. This is one book, for example, that is dedicated to this entire topic. I mean, amongst several others, this particular one, Tahqiq al-Jali, li hadith la nikaha illa bi wali. Now, what's interesting is this hadith of there is no nikah except with a wali is transmitted from several companions, although all of these chains are problematic, and I will come to that point in just a moment. But before I do, I want to highlight some of the discrepancies, some of the issues that people have been transmitting for centuries on end. Right now, for example, this hadith is transmitted for example by Al-Hakim in his Mustadrak. Abu Abdullah Al-Hakim An-Nisapuri in his Mustadrak, he brings the hadith La nikaha illa bi wali, and then he says that فَقَدْ أَخْرَجَهُ مِنْ حَدِيثِ عَائِشَةَ وَأَبِي مُوسَى الْأَشْعَرِي. So these two people, Aisha and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. And you'll realize that these are the only real chains in this whole chapter. From Aisha radiallahu anha and from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. And they have problems, but I'll come to that in a moment. But then he says, وَفِي الْبَابِ. And in this chapter we have hadith from, this is Al-Hakim writing, from Ali radiallahu an, from Abdullah ibn Abbas, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abu Dhar al-Ghaffari, Miqdad ibn al-Aswad, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Jabir ibn Abdullah, Abu Huraira, Imran ibn Hussein, Abdullah ibn Amr, Miswar ibn Makhrama, Anas ibn Malik. And then, so that's, I've counted out 13, says, وَأَكْثَرُهَا صَحِيحًا. Okay. Chalo, a bit of a blag there, أَكْثَرُهَا No problem. But, so he brings 13 people. Now, these riwayat come from, there's other narrations coming. People will present narrations from Umar ibn al-Khattab and other people. There's issues with a lot of these, but the point that I'm trying to get to, Hafidh ibn Hajar, it is stated, so people start transmitting from Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani when he's commenting on this in his notes, in his Amali, upon the Mustadrak of Al-Hakim. So people transmit, who come after Ibn Hajar, transmit his words where he says, وَفِي الْبَابِ عَنْ عَلِيِّ بْنَ أَبِي طَالِبٍ وَابْنَ عَبَّاسٍ ثُمَّ سَرَدَ تَمَامَ 30 صَحَابِيًا, that he transmits 30 companions, 30, 30. That's, it says the word 30 صَحَابِيًا. Now there's a big problem here because that is not true. Okay, now everybody starts to, this thing, what Ibn Hajar wrote, everybody does they kind of copy and paste what he said here. That Al-Hakim then goes on to mention 30. What he meant to say was 13. 13, but he said 30. Now you'll see people like Shawkani transmit that statement from him, San'ani transmits it from him. You'll see Kattani in his Nazm al-Mutanathir. You see, Kattani writes a book about mutawatir hadith, hadith that have been transmitted by so many people. He transmits this statement of Ibn Hajar, 30 companions. Zayla'i, and you'll get other people transmitting this. Now the truth is that that was actually a mistake, because there are not 30 people that have actually kind of said that. Okay, so it's 13. Right, okay, now the problem with all of these chains that have come, you'll find that all of these other companions that they quote, whether it's going to be from Abu Huraira, whether it's going to be from Umar ibn Khattab, all of them are massively problematic, okay, massively. You'll find, first of all, a lot of them are not even hadith, they're just statements like, so for example, somebody said to Umar, like, get up and marry her off to so-and-so. So they're using that as a dalil as well. That why did they say to Umar, why didn't they just do it themselves? But that's not a decisive, that could have just been by choice. They could have just said, do this. It didn't mean that. So it's not actually clear statements, just to make that clear, okay? A lot of these are like that. A lot of them are mawquf, so they're not actually from the Prophet. They're just companions saying their opinions. However, the two narrations that can stand some weight, the two that come down, are from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, which is transmitted from his son Abu Burda. Now this is the hadith that Tirmidhi brings, and he kind of like goes on and supports, and he does highlight the ikhtilaf in it. The issue with this hadith, first of all, and the other one is to do with Aisha. So these two chains we're going to look at this quite briefly, not too much depth, is that this hadith of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari is transmitted, right? You've got this through certain chains. One is by Abu Ishaq, and it's a popular narration. The problem with this chain is many people who are transmitting this hadith, like legends, who are greater than Abu Ishaq, like Shu'bah, Sufyan al-Thawri, they say that this hadith does not actually go to Abu Musa. It's his son Abu Burda saying it directly from the Prophet, which makes this chain broken, okay? Which means that you can't actually rely on it, okay? This is one of the key issues that Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi relies on when he's refuting this whole chapter. Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi says that, look, listen, you guys are presenting these ahadith, and the truth is that these hadith from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, major Huffaz, Amir al-Mu'mineen, legends of hadith who transmit this same hadith, do not even mention him in the chain. It stops with his son Abu Burda, and he does not take from the Prophet. So this chain is incomplete. Okay, so that is one of the key problems you have straight away with that chain. And I know people will say that some people have accepted it. Of course they have. But what I'm trying to show, and I know here, you see, like, they're going to show Bukhari's comment. Now, Bukhari's comment, when he was discussing this with most likely Tirmidhi, who transmits it, he says that when he was asked about this hadith from Israel, from Abi Ishaq, from Abu Burda, from his father, La nikah illa bi wali, he said, look, I know it's got some extra in it, but we'll accept it. Even though Shu'bah and Thawri say it was not a complete chain, but he says, look, like, it's okay, we can still go with it. That's fine, that's his choice. I'm not saying that. But the truth is that Shu'bah is called Amirul Mu'minina fil Hadith. He said this chain was not connected. Sufyan al-Thawri, who's once again greater than Abu Ishaq and these people, is saying that this chain is not connected. So you have, okay, now this other chain that we have, Darqutni brings this in when critiquing Zuhri's hadith. Why? Because he says, Darqutni was asked about the hadith of Ibn Musayyib from Abu Huraira, La tunkahul mar'a illa bi wali, that a woman is not married except with her guardian present. He says this chain from Zuhri, from Sa'id ibn Musayyib, from Abu Huraira is wrong. It ought to be that Zuhri from Urwa, from Aisha. Okay, this is how the chain ought to be. Now, what's interesting, people, this is an interesting point, that he goes on to bring several other, Darqutni goes on to bring several chains to support this, and he shows that who has transmitted this hadith. So he'll go on and say, look, from Sa'id ibn Musayyib, from Abu Huraira, this is transmitted by Tabarani. Who transmits it? Umar ibn Qais. Who else transmits it? Sulaiman ibn Arqam. So Umar ibn Qais, Sulaiman ibn Arqam. And then he mentions that there is an extra. Now this is an important point. There is an extra, an adage, an addition in that hadith that says, La nikaha illa bi wali. A woman cannot get married except with a wali. Wa shahidai adl, and 2 witnesses. The interesting thing, people, this hadith of 2 witnesses, right, only is brought by this chain. That you'll see that this thing of Ibn Hibban mentions that that this لا يصح في ذكر شاهدين غير هذا الخبر. Okay, so you'll see this thing of that there must be 2 witnesses present is only valid in one single chain at most, which is an interesting point, since it's, you know, accepted by almost everybody, and it's based on a very weak kind of chain. I find that quite fascinating, and that's why the Maliki Madhab said that witnesses are not necessary for a nikah to take place. Simply an announcement is made, because it's not proven from the Prophet anyway that he said witnesses were present. That this hadith that we have of Sulaiman ibn Arqam, that la nikah illa bi wali, has tafarrud in it. Now, just highlighting some points here. Although this hadith is transmitted in many books of la nikah illa bi wali from Aisha, coming that she mentioned, this Khatib al-Baghdadi brings it, Bayhaqi, Humaydi, Ibn Abi Shayba, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Hibban. There's up to, in fact, 21 people transmitting it, all of them going through Zuhri. This is important. Ibn Jurayj is the one who is taking it before him. Now, Ibn Jurayj from Sulaiman ibn Musa from Ibn Shihab. Now what's interesting, this is a point I want you to focus on. Imam Ahmed brings in his Musnad that from Ismail ibn Ulayya, that from Ibn Jurayj, who says that Sulaiman ibn Musa told us this from Zuhri. Ibn Jurayj says, then I met Zuhri. Now this is an important point because the Hanafiya use this as a dalil, and those people who say a wali is not necessary. Because the first, remember I said this whole thing is based on two hadith. One of Abu Musa, which many scholars like Shu'bah, Sufyan al-Thawri said was not a connected chain. The other on Aisha, from Urwa from Aisha. Now the interesting thing is that Zuhri, who transmits this, and from him Sulaiman ibn Musa, Ibn Jurayj says that he takes this hadith from them. He says, I met Zuhri, which he does meet him. He says, I asked him about this hadith. فَسَأَلْتُهُ عَنْ هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ فَلَمْ يَعْرِفْهُ. He himself didn't know it. Zuhri himself, who is the transmitter of this hadith, so many people are transmitting it from him. Ibn Jurayj says, when I asked him about this hadith, لَمْ يَعْرِفْهُ. He himself didn't know it. This was one of the key reasons that many scholars abandoned this hadith and narration from of Aisha through Zuhri, because they said that this was the only strongest chain that they had, and this was the only chain that is coming through Ibn Jurayj from Zuhri that mentioned two witnesses is also necessary. And this is the chain regarding which Ibn Hibban said that لا يصح في ذكر الشاهدين غير هذا الخبر. This was the only one that we had sound where it mentioned two witnesses. But Ibn Jurayj himself is saying, although Sulaiman ibn Musa told me that Zuhri said this from Urwa from Aisha, but when I met Zuhri, he himself did not know this narration. And Zuhri himself is one of the scholars that gives the fatwa that a woman can get married without a wali. So you can see, people, that this was the key. Now, there was a lot of kalam, like the names I mentioned before, by the way, the people that transmit this, some of the people earlier on from the other chain, Umar ibn Qais, the unacceptable Sulaiman ibn Arqam is considered matruk al-hadith, rejected, da'if. This one of even Zuhri from Urwa from Aisha, Sulaiman ibn Musa, right? Even Nasa'i said about him, he's unacceptable, he's not strong in hadith. He said his hadith are problematic. Abu Hatim said في حديثي وفي حديثه بعض الاضطراب, his hadith contradict themselves at times. Ibn Adi mentioned that he mentions hadith which nobody else transmits at time. So there were issues with this nevertheless. But my point being, I want to just put that down for now. My point being that this whole chapter, now if you look at this, we were going from this thing of some people like Al-Kattani in his book Nazm al-Mutanathir is saying this is mutawatir. This hadith is so well distributed that it's certain knowledge. It's like knowing that China exists. This is how certain this knowledge is. But upon analysis and dissection, we come to find that first of all, none of these chains can even stand any decent, rigorous kind of analysis apart from two, which was from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and from Aisha. The problem with Abu Musa al-Ash'ari's chain is those who transmit it that were known as Amirul Mu'minina fil Hadith, like Shu'bah and Sufyan, they themselves say that this is not from Abu Musa, but his son Abu Burda is transmitting it as a broken chain from the Prophet. So with that chain drops, people. Then you have the other one of Aisha, and this chain of Aisha radiallahu an is the only one standing, and that comes through Urwa, through Ibn Shihab, From him, Sulaiman ibn Musa, who Nasa'i says is unacceptable, who other people have problematized, coming through Ibn Jurayj, and then from up to 20 people transmitting it. But Ibn Jurayj himself saying, when I met Ibn Shihab and asked him, Ibn Shihab himself did not know this hadith. And his own fatwa was that this is permissible. So, with that, we can conclude that forget mutawatir. Forget mutawatir. This hadith is not even sahih. Okay? And other people may challenge that understanding. They may say, well, we want to accept it. Fine, accept it. But you can't critique those people who don't accept it. Because they have a firm stance, a firm foundation to build their understanding on. So that was the hadithi discussion on why there is not a single, undisputed, categorical, conclusive hadith, sarih and sahih, right, without criticism on that a woman must have a guardian to conduct her nikah. Okay, so based on that, people, it is not necessary for a woman to have, according to the Quran and Sunnah, clearly. Right, now, that said, I would like to follow up now so we've got that clear, that, from the clear sources, we know that, okay, from the Quran and Sunnah, the Quran can be interpreted either side. So there's some verses which show that a woman can marry herself. So, for example, when the verse about talaq, and it mentions that حتى تنكح زوجا غيره, until she marries, تنكح زوجا غيره. So some verses imply this, some verses imply that, when you are marrying them off. So the Quran can be interpreted either way. It doesn't speak clearly on this matter. One thing we know for sure is that women were independent generally on several matters, and in some things it was a patriarchal society, unquestionably. Now, there is a hadith that Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi brings that Aisha radiallahu anha marries her niece off, who is Abdurrahman's daughter. Her name was Hafsa, so her brother Abdurrahman was away on a journey. She marries her off. Abdurrahman comes back and is quite upset, actually, that how come, you didn't wait for me and you didn't ask me. And she says that if you want, I'll call it off. Like, I mean, we can, if we want, we can end it. And he says, no, like, don't be silly. Why would we do that? The interesting point is nobody says that it's invalid. So Aisha is clearly not a man marrying off her own niece here. So that is one of the main evidences. So from the Sunnah, we find nothing conclusive. We find doubtful narrations either side. One thing we can understand is, so we can we've got the schools of law, the Hanafi school, or Imam Abu Hanifa, Zufar. You've got scholars like Sha'bi, Az-Zuhri. You've got Sufyan al-Thawri, and I would say Imam Malik as well, okay, in this camp, that don't believe that this is a necessary condition. And then you've got other scholars like Imam Shafi'i and Ahmed ibn Hanbal. Like I said, people may try to put Imam Malik in that camp, but when you look at his fatwa as I presented, it shows that he clearly understood this was more a social thing and not a divine matter from God. So now I would like to say, well, look, that all said, people need to take their social reality into consideration. I would advise that it is always important to have your guardians involved. Okay, I will advise that. It is always important to have them involved where it is, so long as it is actually possible. I think people shouldn't embark on just these kind of these very secret kind of marriages and things like this. I think these things most often lead to more problems than not. So that is my advice. I'm not advocating things like that. I am advocating that you do always have your family involved, because family will always, it will give you some credence, it will give you some support, and having that completes the ceremony for you as far as it being meaningful, okay, counts. So that's what I would advise. The other thing is that what if the parents do not allow the marriage? Then I would say, look, it still depends. If it's something totally stupid, like they're saying the only reason we're not allowing this relationship is because of something like caste, for example, which many people surprisingly still do, I would say things like that are ridiculous. And it's your choice, it's your life. Islamically, you are entitled to conduct a nikah. If they're not saying objecting to things like that, they're objecting to matters which are actually make sense. Like, wait a minute, how will this person even support you? How will you embark on this relationship? The person, he doesn't seem legitimate, or he's involved in crime, or he's involved in this. Then I think their concerns are 100% genuine and well placed. And, quite often you will find that matters will unfold as they advised, that things just mess up. So I would say, look, maybe take their advice if it's like that, because it's not a fairy tale. It's not just Bollywood, you're not just going to sing a few songs and that's life done for you. So I would say it is your call ultimately, it is your life, and you will have to live it. Islam kind of leaves things. It's not God, what God is saying, but I would say that there is some sense, I would always advise to have family involved so long as it is actually possible. Okay. So cool, people. I think that kind of answers that mas'ala, which I think a lot of people have asked, that must a woman have a wali present? One thing we have seen, that there is not a single sarih hadith that can stand the test of criticism, that is uncriticized. Okay, so cool. With that, I'll tell you what, I'll take a few rapid round questions. I can't seem to see any comments. I don't know what on earth is going on. I can just see who is watching. My comments seem to have disappeared. And so I'll take a few that have already been maybe put on the... Why is that? Admin, what is going on? What are you guys doing? Huh? Who's on admin duty? What is... ¿Qué estás haciendo? What's going on? Let me see. Does the Crescent and Star symbol have any Islamic relevance? Allah refers to a moon god because of this symbol. Although the ancient Arabs did worship a kind of moon god, they didn't identify Allah as that moon god. So I don't believe that has any... What is interesting is the research done on Sinai and Sinin, which is in northwest Arabia, because Sin did refer to the moon god. And it seems that the people that took that kind of religion from the Babylonians, so the people of Shu'aib and those who preceded him, did in that region used to worship the moon god. And when Musa alayhi salam comes there and brings the Israelites to Jabal al-Tur, and hence this whole thing, that is interesting that kind of religion was taken into Arabia, but they didn't used to refer to the moon god as Allah. And the Prophet, and in Islam, this star crescent is not, this is something that came much after, okay. Alright, other than that, what else is going on? What are other... these comments, I think I've answered most of these. Right, is there... I can't seem to see... Let me see if I can... I can see some of the comments here, I think. Somebody said, my whole point is you cannot reconcile religion and freedom. But I feel that you can reconcile it to a great degree, much greater degree. You definitely can. I think in our daily life, we always will have some restrictions on freedoms. So, for example, we don't say we have the freedom to kill people. There will always be, all human beings will recognize limitations to freedom, which I think is done in a very reasonable way. So I don't think that's a problem. But I just feel that some of the limitations placed by the clergy are misplaced. Okay. They're more a result of institutionalized religion than Islam in itself. Does nail polish invalidate wudu? Halal nail polish and makeup necessary or crazy? Elizabeth is asking this. You see, in my understanding, I've highlighted before that you don't need halal nail polish, although there are these products now available. I feel that nail polish is absolutely fine. You can do wudu upon it. You do not need to kind of go buy certain products, but that's up to you. You can buy those products if it makes you feel better. I think that because in Islam we are only asked to wash the apparent. We are not asked, so if the varnish or the polish takes the layer of the apparent, then you just wash the apparent. Same goes with hair dye, hair gel, any of these things. Makeup, you just wash the apparent, okay? And hence Imam Malik, when he's asked in his famous fatwa about a person who wears a ring, that do they have to remove the ring during wudu, and he says no, and they say, well, what if the ring is very tight so his water cannot permeate or pass under the ring? He said even if. So this shows that it's not necessary, people. Freedom is hedonist in nature. Oof, hedonist. This what else is going on? Somebody said Islam is not for everyone. Perhaps. Or maybe the way it's presented is not for everyone. What would you classify the correct or closest to the Hanafi fiqh? I think the Hanafi fiqh was an amazing madhab as it was laid out by Imam Abu Hanifa, but that madhab has kind of morphed and mutated into this very institutionalized version that we have today that is not reminiscent of Imam Abu Hanifa in the slightest. So, cool. What else is going on, people? What else is going on? Was there any... I think we should wrap it up shortly. Was there any masala to... All right, I did ask for... I don't know. I don't think I got it sent to it there. Let me see something. Nope. Nope. Didn't get that. Okay, cool. What else is going on, people? Any interesting... The Mufti masala of the the gossip, people, the gossip. Well, as I can see, there's been another video, the gossip section, Mufti masala section. So there's been another video from the Deobandis who are calling out Asrar Rashid, Mullah Asrar, people. I watched this other video where it said, right, you will have to answer. So they've dropped in some Brailvi blasphemies of calling the Prophet God, and this is just, they said this is like a trailer of what's to come. Interesting. So all this masala, what else has been going on? I did actually want to play a clip, but I haven't got it here. It's hilarious, actually. Oh God, I did ask some of the lads to send me the, because they'd sent it before, but they haven't. I don't have it now. But there's actually a debate going on in, I mean, there's a debate that the Deobandis kind of make reference to in their first video by a scholar called Maulana Bandialvi, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, who's up north somewhere. I think Bradford, I'm not sure where, up north somewhere, in Bradford, I think. So they go to debate him, and they have certain points. So they're speaking about the ibarat, the problematic quotes of the Deobandi Akabir, and he is saying to them that, right, okay, I want you to list out these three. He wants them to list these three problematic Deobandi kind of statements. So he's from a Brailvi background, and this is the debate that the Deobandi calling out Asrar was making reference to. Now, in this discussion, that scholar Maulana Bandialvi is saying to them that I want you to list these 3 problematic statements. Let's discuss them. So I want you to write them out first. So they are saying, oh, but we found equal statements said by Deobandi scholars. By Brelvi scholars. So your scholars have said very similar things. How would you answer that? So he is insisting, no, let's discuss this first. So, and in it he says, right, because he begins by saying, it's in Urdu, and he's saying, write them, inko likho, 1, 2, 3. This is what he's saying. But then the whole thing becomes 1, 2, 3 karo, 1, 2, 3. And it becomes so hilarious. You've got to hear it, people. It's such a shame I didn't have it. I want to actually play it out, but I can't seem to find it right now. And in it, he just keeps saying this. Oh, 1, 2, 3 karo, 1, 2, 3. And he just non-stop. 1, 2, 3. Go 1, 2, 3. Go 1, 2, 3 karo, 1, 2, 3. Right, so people, that was hilarious to watch, I gotta say. It's a long debate, pure shouting going on, but that part in it is epic, and it continues. It becomes a motif, a kind of theme that runs right through that discussion. 1, 2, 3 karo, 1, 2, 3. So people, with that, I think we should wrap it up. That's some any interesting things, reach out to me. Any interesting discussions, dialogues, masala, reach out to me, share it with me, people. Other than that, I hope you're having an awesome time, and things are going very well, inshallah. Remember one thing: always keep a positive outlook on life. Okay, if you smile, if you keep happy, you will see reasons to be happy. Okay, if you keep a very pessimistic outlook, if you're kind of always then you'll just see more reasons to be sad, and like, why does the world always do me over? But it's actually not like that. You know, I've met a lot of people that are quite pessimistic sometimes, and change, you know, you meet people, by the way, this is just a little tip from a psychological perspective. It's in your subconscious speech. So your subconscious speech reflects the state of mind, and it's like they kind of impact each other, the way they kind of work. So, for example, people will, like, let's say, you as simple as things like asking somebody, how are you? And the way people respond. So people, you'll find so many people saying things like, oh, you know, not bad, or, you know, things have been worse, or not bad, I guess. See, what a negative way to respond. What a negative way. Like, what do people mean by not bad? I mean, I understand what they mean. But like, there's so much, like, they could equally say, yeah, things are good. Alhamdulillah, awesome, chilling. All right, rocking, rock on. They could say anything. Because there are many things that are also awesome. I'm sure there are many things that are problematic in life as well. But there's many awesome things going on as well. You know, the gham bhi to bahut hai. I know there's a lot of, what's that? What's that? Gham itne the ke ghabra ke pee gaya. That there was so many sorrows or problems that I became frightened and I resorted to drink. Gham itne the ke ghabra ke pee gaya. Thodi si khushi mili to mila ke pee gaya. He says, I just had a bit of happiness, so what I did is I just mixed that into my drink and drank it. Yun to janam se peene ki nahi thi aadat humko. It's not that I've drank since birth. शराब को तन्हा देखा, तरस खा के पी गया. He says, I saw alcohol so lonely. I felt sorry. It's from my empathy that I felt sorry. I was like, yaar, pee lo, yaar, pee lo. So with that, people, have an awesome time. Take very good care of yourselves. Till next week, inshallah. Stay blessed. Stay smiling, inshallah. May Allah keep you all smiling. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.